What does it take to be a successful entrepreneur? A dangerous amount of coffee and a ton of grit. My name is Jason Tracy, and every week I interview business leaders to share their stories, life lessons, failures, and advice with you. Welcome to Coffee and Grit. What is up? What is up? What is up? Welcome back to another episode of Coffee and Grit. So excited to be here. So excited for our guest today in the studio, Christie Hajduk from 9 to 5 Wellness. And so excited to get that conversation kicked off. I want to kick off with a couple of things. I was just sharing with Christie a little story that I had gotten from a friend that called me up midweek and was like, Jason, I didn't know you were famous. And so I wanted to give a shout out to one of the listeners, Andrew Black. Man, thanks so much for listening to the show. Thanks so much for being a fan. I really appreciate it. So if you hear this, thanks, man. Second thing, sales is so hard or so easy, but we make it so hard, and that's including myself. And I want to give like lessons that, I've shared so many stories, whether myself or somebody else, that, we can all learn from. So I want to kick this show off this week with a lesson that I learned that I already knew, but sometimes, you have to eat your own pudding, right? Things that you tell your clients. You ever do that? Or like you tell your clients do this, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in a situation
you're
where
like, oh gosh, darn it, I just told them that and I got to do it myself now. Yep.
So I am so passionate with clients that like, do not send a proposal without setting a meeting and going over that proposal, right? One, that's like a cardinal sin to me, is like, because if you send a proposal out, if you're sending a proposal out, it's nice and easy. It seems easy, right? You can send out this email. The thing is like they open it up, and if they see something in price, they see something that scares them off. Now it's ghost town, right? They don't pick up the phone. They're not answering your emails. They're not answering your calls, and you have very little control over whether you can get back a hold of that person. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is if you have a process that works, stay with it. Sales process is everything, and do not compromise it for any situation, no matter how good you feel about it. If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for everything. And so that's me. I know this. I went out a few weeks ago and had this incredible discovery meeting. I mean, it was a second discovery meeting. We did the first one on Zoom. Second one, we did this 2-hour in-depth in-person meeting at their location. And it was 2 hours. It was on a Thursday night. It was getting to be like later. And so I skipped my short process, and he was like, what's the next step? And I'm like, I'll shoot you over a proposal. And I didn't set a meeting. And so I sent him a proposal, called him, nothing. It's just crickets. And it's like one of those things that's like a good situation. Now, I did have a trick up my sleeve and was able to text him and get things back turned around, but make it so much easier on yourself. Learn from my lessons, learn from what I would preach to other people. And believe me, it's going back and realizing and you learn from your mistakes and your failures, right? And so stick to your process, know it works. No matter how much somebody pressures you, and this person didn't even pressure me, I did it to myself, but some people will be like, oh, can we skip this? No. In order to be successful, in order to have success, this is the process, and you have to stick with it. If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for everything. So that's my rant for the day. Christie, welcome to the studio.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So you're doing the podcast round. So
yes, I am. I'm doing my podcast rounds. So it's podcast month for April.
Super awesome. I'm glad that this is one of them. We booked it a couple months ago.
We did. We had such amazing conversation. We're like, holy moly, that was like an hour. That's felt like 5 minutes. So now the conversation continues.
In the studio with cameras, with the headphones.
Yes, absolutely.
So how did you start?
How did I start? Oh boy. Well, first I started by completely burning myself out. So yeah, I started there.
Yeah.
And I decided that it was time to make a change. And instead of just saying I was going to make a change, it was actually time for action. So, I started in corporate. I was working in advertising, running digital campaigns, running the entire digital department at the last agency that I was at. And so there's a lot. There's a lot that I was managing there. There's a lot I was managing at home and with family. And if you aren't trying to curb burnout, it's going to happen. It's never a goal.
You're going to hit that wall.
But yeah, you're going to hit that wall, and it can be a tough ride trying to get out of that. And I think in 2020, a lot of us really sat back and reflected, what do I want? Like, what do I want? Not just in this next immediate future, tomorrow, next week, but what do I really want for myself? So there's a lot of that going on. And in this midst of burnout, I decided I was going to sign up for my yoga teacher training. I had done a certificate 2 years prior just to be able to like teach in homes and at just private gyms. But I was like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do the 200-hour training and become an actual, yoga teacher. So I started doing that, and then the world shut down. So then I had to pivot, and I had to pivot more and learn to teach online and be comfortable filming myself and doing things a little bit differently than we were used to in that world. So I started with a lot of, I got to pivot and I got to change and I have to take action because that's the only way something's going to happen.
Isn't it funny? It's like I was just talking about this in the podcast I did earlier. We were talking about like the person was talking about the negative things that happened during COVID, and I'm like, for me, from an entrepreneur coach standpoint, I saw so many beautiful things happen. I saw people that say that I'm tired of this thing that I've been doing, that I've been slaving at, and like I want to take my time back and do something that I care about and I love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there were. If you wanted to look at it through that lens, there were a lot of negative things to look at. And that's not saying that there aren't things that were challenges, absolute challenges that had to be overcome. But when I look back at that, I look at what I regained. And I regained a big piece of myself that I felt got buried under corporate Christie. And so I really got to bring back to light some of those elements that I started to just become disillusioned with. In the just busyness of life. And so I really got to resurface some of those things that sparked joy and sparked light and inspiration.
So what's your history and background with yoga? Why going on that yoga route? Why was that your passion?
Well, I've always been on the move. Always. Absolutely. I mean, if I wasn't climbing a tree or riding my bike or ice skating on my dirt road that I happened to ice over, I was doing something else that was movement. I was in the basement, imitating workouts from Denise Austin and stuff like that.
Nice.
So I actually started doing yoga, not in a studio or anything like that. I started doing it in my living room with my mom watching Denise Austin VHS tapes. I mean, if I'm going to be honest, that's where I started.
Yeah.
And
somewhere Denise Austin would be really proud.
I know, right? I hope. I mean, I can still hear her in my head. I had that flow memorized, and but I took that with me then to college, and I used that to help self-regulate. I mean, you're in college, you're on your own for the first time, and you're trying to manage a schedule. And I went to school full time, and I worked full time in a coffee shop. Nice. So there was a lot to manage, and I'm like, I'm a broke college kid. I can't pay to go to a yoga studio. So then YouTube, and so I was able to use that as a way to distress, to get back to myself, give back to myself, and just decompress.
It's cool. Again, with the resources coming back, but what you can find on YouTube, and again, you can do it at home.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean,
for the self-starter, someone like you that's
right.
like, get into it.
Well, because at the end of the day, yeah, you want to go to that studio and have that group experience, but it's like, it's really about yourself. And I actually just posted something today, since it is April 1st, and I'm like, you're not a true yogi if you can't do a headstand. That's the first time I kicked up in a headstand in years. It's not a part of my regular practice. And it's like, it couldn't be further from the truth. The poses and the movements that we do in yoga, they're literally just one tiny aspect of the practice. There's so much more to it than just moving your body. But that's where a lot of us start. That's where a lot of us enter this space. And there's just so many great resources now online where it's like, if you can't pay to go and get a yoga membership, that shouldn't stop you from doing yoga. If you can't pay $100 for a mat, well, the mat wasn't invented until 1986-ish. So that really wasn't a thing. That was actually born out of a woman who had a condition who could no longer sweat out of her hands and her feet. So because of that, she couldn't get grip on the floor. Because when we have that little bit of moisture, we can actually grip with our hands.
Yeah.
So I tell people, I'm like, you don't even have to have a mat. Do it on the carpet. Do it on the floor. Do it with what you can, where you're at. We don't need these fancy clothes. We don't need the fancy mats. You just need a body.
It's so funny, the limitations we put in our head. This person had a specific condition that created something that now we see as something that you need to do yoga with. You really don't.
It's like a status symbol sometimes. And it's something where it's like you could spend crazy amount of money on a mat, but at the end of the day, you might not need it. Now, if you're doing like hot yoga and stuff like that, where you need that extra grip, there's definitely tools and resources that can help us. And I love using props, especially because they help bring us closer to our bodies. Like, they're not a sign of weakness in any way. They're just a sign to help us get into our bodies and tap into those postures just a little bit more. So it's one of those things where it's like, you don't have to come with any of those things, but don't feel like you can't use them if you want to.
That's really cool. The other day I was showing somebody, we were talking about basketball. It's funny, a trust builder at Big B Coffee. And I was talking about like stretching. I think we talked about this when we had our conversation of like what stretching has done for me in my basketball game. Like I'll be 45 in May and I'm far more athletic now than what I was probably even high school and in my early 20s. And it's like moving my hips, stretching my hips, doing things that I haven't done in years and like my range of motion now. And I was showing this guy, he asked me what I do for hip strength. And I was like, so I got up in the middle of Big B and I'm doing these stretches and I did this like one particular stretch. And he's like, wow, I don't even know if I could do that. And I was like, at the beginning, I had to hold on to something. I'd get down into it and I had to hold on to whether it was a railing or whatever it was, a pole. I used something as a prop. And then over time, I don't have to use that anymore.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And that's the biggest thing about starting anything, whether it's a movement or business or anything. Sometimes you have to take baby steps, and that looks different for everybody. But just realizing where you're at in that moment and giving yourself the grace and permission to start where you're at. When we push ourselves too much, sometimes that's where we injure ourselves and we just set ourselves back. But just being honest with ourselves and being like, that's okay. This is where I'm at today, but it's not going to be where I'm at tomorrow, next week, next year.
It's huge. Just taking friends in the gym. I've had a lot of different friends that have worked out with me over time, and they come in. They've never been there. Yeah. It's like, especially with men, they have like this whole like, oh, I've got to lift the heavy weights, and they're over there like struggling, pulling up, and it's like, dude, grab the tens.
Yeah.
Because you're going to actually get a better movement. Take the ego away from this. First off, no one's staring at you, Yeah. And if they are, they've got bigger problems than worrying about whether you're lifting tens, right?
Right. Well, and I think that's a downside of social media is we're constantly fed all this very curated information, or we're fed those unique moments that happen in isolation. And we think that that's the case for everything. And so there's a lot of people that have gym shyness, or even just going to group classes. Like a lot of the private clients that I work with, they're just trying to build those foundations and that confidence to come back to that group setting. When it's like, we're putting that on ourselves, looking at social media and seeing that as true. When it's just not. And yeah, like you said, it's sometimes we got to set the egos aside because then we start to compensate and then, tell your lower back, I said hello, because doing a lateral raise with heavy weights and, thrusting your hips into it is not the movement. And you're just going to hurt your lower back. So. Oh,
absolutely. Getting in and doing deadlifts and your back is rounded. Like you're going to rip it out, like it's not good. Let's just start with the bar.
Yeah.
And let's get the motion down.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's lots of times, where it's like, I'm going to do a set that's like really lightweight. Like I know I can do this, just to set in my mind, tell my nervous system, I'm safe here and I know how to do this. And then just set that form and then move the weight up.
So you start your business, you're pivoting 2020, like, are you doing mostly group now? Or you talk about one-on-one, what does it look like?
So I'm doing a little bit of everything. So I'm working one-on-one with clients, and that can be anything that's yoga, personal training, corrective exercise. I love working on balance and stability. huge passion of mine is working on that balance and stability piece. But I also work in group classes. So I teach at local studios. And then I also have workshops. So like I have a workshop coming up April 27th, Foundational Health from the Ground Up. That's all about foot health. And I have a mini course that I'm working on right now, which will launch later this year or later this month.
Is that one on foot health too, or?
Yeah. So that one's on foot health, because anytime I'm teaching something on foot health or talking to people about foot health, or what comes out of the workshop is usually I hear, well, now that I took that workshop, I absolutely hate my shoes. So thank you for that. So I usually hear that, or I'm constantly getting questions on like, I don't even know where to start. I want to make better decisions in my footwear, but I don't even know where to start, and I'm not ready to ditch all of my shoes. So the mini course is Learn to Hate Your Shoes, and why it's time to walk away from toxic shoe culture.
I love those names. That is so awesome. How did you drill into the foot?
So that was purely just by chance. I mean, when I'm looking at the lens of wellness and movement, I'm looking at it from the human element. We get so caught up in, we need to exercise and we need to go to the gym. And it's like, at the end of the day, we need to move, to live better, to feel better, to do more. And so I really like to look at it from that human element, functional element. How are we meant to move? And maybe how have we been stifling that? Or how can we start to regain that movement freedom? And one of the areas that I saw that we just do that the most is with our feet. And part of that too goes back to just being a kid and just being like, I hate shoes. Why do I hate shoes so much? They hurt. Why do they always hurt? Why do I have to rub my heels raw just to break in a pair of shoes? Or why do I feel like I have these monstrous, wide feet because my toes are always pinched? When it's like, I don't. Shoes just aren't the natural shape of a foot.
Oh my God, so true. So what do you coach people do? How do you find the right shoe?
So it depends on the person's foot. There's a lot of people that can go straight to like a minimalist shoe. And there's definitely with any part of the body that we're working out, that we're working on building that strength and building mobility, you got to take baby steps. So the first thing that I always tell people is if you want to work on your foot health, just start going barefoot. Spend more time barefoot and expand on the environments that you expose your feet to. Because a lot of times we feel free to, be barefoot in our homes, which might be hardwood or laminate or carpet, but we're not going outside. We're not feeling that grass, the concrete, or, maybe rougher surfaces. But start barefoot. Then let's look at your feet. There's different flat feet that might not be the best for minimalist shoes, but you can definitely add support. Those with high arches, it might be a little too much impact for them. It might be just a little too minimalist for them. But it really depends on your foot and listening to your body. That's the biggest component. Is I always tell people, just listen to your body. And at the end of the day, you can choose how you want to wear them. They can be a gym shoe. They can start to become the only type of shoe that you wear. But that depends on you and how your body's responding.
What's the power to we put shoes and socks on, we cover our feet all the time. Is there a power to grounding and
Absolutely.
having, out in your grass and your lawn,
Oh, absolutely. We have there are vibrations, there are electronical signals that are, being passed through the body, being passed throughout Earth. There's just all this energy that's being transferred about. And when we put shoes on and we put socks on, we are turning off all those receptors. We're dampening all that information, all that stimulus that we can get from the bottom of the feet. And they're an information highway. In the feet, we have a ton of signals, a ton of nerve endings that send signals to the nervous system that let us know where we're at in our environment. They also help to set up those movements that are necessary to navigate our environment. So if we think we've got really thick shoes on and we've got socks on and our feet are they're lazy, they don't know how to communicate to the rest of the body. And then we start trying to walk on these difficult terrains, whether that's just a brick road or cobblestones, or just different rocky, uneven surfaces. And then we might roll an ankle, or we might fall or trip. And a lot of it's, we're just not sending that information that we need to the nervous system to then start to recall the movements that we need to navigate.
That makes total sense. And as you're describing those surfaces, I think of like, and times where I haven't now, I tried to put more focus on, going outside, walking around, like doing that on an everyday basis. But like before that, I'd go out and step on the grass, and you step on a stick, or you step on the cement or the block, and it's like, it hurts, right?
Yeah.
It's like, not only can you twist an ankle, but like your feet aren't built up to like withstand that feeling.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, do you remember those toys? Like, they have all the little metal cylinders, and if you pressed your hand into it on the other side,
Yes.
it would press out into a hand.
Yeah.
Somebody used this example, and it was a perfect example. They're like, if you're wearing a shoe and you push a shoe through, it's the shoe shape. But if you were to put your foot in it, there's going to be all these little different nuances, all these different little grooves in it, because our feet are so capable of movement. We have 33 joints in our feet and our ankles. And that's around 25% of what's in the body.
Wow.
The other 25% being in the hands and the wrists. So we have a lot of movement capabilities in the feet, because joints equal movement. So if you think about how much the feet could move, there's a lot of ways that the feet can adapt to moving around, say, a rounded surface or a surface that's on an angle, being able to flex and have that mobility in the foot. But we start to lose that over time, because if you don't use it, you're going to lose it.
It's such a good theme. Even like the yoga and like stretching your joints and stuff like that. What I was feeling before I started working my hips, I'd always have this back tightness. And I thought I was like, oh, I got to get down and do some back stretches. I found out that was a myth.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. A lot of the times when we are feeling a pain, so even if it's a headache, or our neck, it's a different area. It's not that one specific area. So a lot of the times we think, okay, like you said, like back, like my pain, like the pain is in my back, so I need to stretch my back. I've always dealt with lower back stuff since high school, so I'm always working on that type of stuff. But one big thing that's an indicator for me is tight legs. If my legs get super tight, if I go to the gym and I'm working my legs and lifting heavy, the next day, if I am not stretching,
Your back.
I'm back. I'm folded over. Yeah. Because the muscles in my legs are pulling on that back. And the hips are a common one for a lot of us, because we spend so much time sitting. So with our legs in a 90-degree angle, and a lot of the times we think, well, I work at a desk, so I sit for 8 hours a day. Okay, well, if you commute to work, what's your commute time? If you have a hobby or just your relaxation time has you sitting, then you're sitting, and we're sitting for usually meals. And again, it's that sitting at that 90-degree angles with very little movement breaks and shifting that just creates these really tight, really weak hips that can then also pull on that lower back.
Anybody that is in the same boat as I was, is like when you're sitting in that chair and you get up and you have to like walk like 10 steps in order to like straighten out.
Yes. You have to kind of like unwind yourself a little bit. Yeah.
It's like taking the runway launch off like the plane, like trying to get my back up, feeling like 90. That's the thing, is like a back just like that. You can go from feeling like completely healthy, like unbeatable, unbreakable, to feeling like 90 years old and frail and brittle, just like that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was back when I was in my corporate world and had a desk job, I sat on the floor and wrapped presents for Christmas one time. And the next day I'm like, oh my gosh, I had to have my husband literally like lift me out of the couch, because I'm like, I can't get up, like just doing that different position, just like my back's like, nope. So it's something that we have to pay constant attention to. I mean, our wellness is our life, and we have to take ownership of that.
It's so true. And that's why I love you having this conversation and getting it out there, because there's so many things that we take for granted.
Yes.
And especially if you're not feeling it, you take it for granted every day, and then until you do feel it, and now it might be too late,
Right. Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I've seen so many stories of people that have done that, where it's like, they're getting that job that sits at the desk, and they're just like so into the, their life of work, their life of other things. And then they go to do stuff on the weekends, or they go to take that vacation, and then it's like, my back, my knee, my hips, my feet. And then it's like you feel like you're breaking. But it's that variety of movement and constantly moving. It's creating that variety. It's creating that very diverse movement profile, and looking at what type of activities do you love to do? What type of activities do you love to do, and what movements does it take to do them? Insert those into your life. And I love to find just unique and fun ways to do that with what you're already doing. Who says you have to go and, go do that one workout, go do this workout video for 30 minutes. If we're moving more, we need less of that dedicated time.
It's so huge. And again, like, we can follow a workout program and stuff like that, but I think of that of like, how are we moving?
Yeah.
There's like some different videos out where there was a video I saw this guy, and he was like, somebody was making fun of him, what he was doing in the gym. He had like a weight that was like tucked under his arm, and then he had like a weight here, and he was like walking around the gym, and somebody was like making fun of him, but then it showed like he was preparing to like carry his baby and the luggage while going on vacation. And it was just like thinking of getting ready for that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. That's why it's like I teach some joint healthy classes. And so some of the things that we'll do is like, we'll take a blanket and we'll flick a blanket, or we'll take like it and we'll create a figure 8 with it and we'll throw it over the head. And it's just like, well, yeah, if you're going to cuddle up on the couch with a blanket, you're going to throw that blanket over you like a cape and roll yourself into a little burrito. But can we bring our arms up overhead to even do that? Or, I've had clients that are said, well, I'm having a hard time even putting my dishes in the cupboard above my head. I have to move them down. Well, can you squat down and put your dishes down there too? So, it's like you have to be able to do those different movements, and everything takes strength. So we've got to maintain that muscle. We need to maintain that mobility. And a lot of the times that can happen with just adding more movement.
So with the show, it's for entrepreneurs, for business owners. And so I love how your company is 9 to 5 wellness, because it's from the entrepreneurial standpoint, sometimes our life is like more like 9 to 9, we're covering all these things because we're parents on top of it. We have our lives. Like I love how you're incorporating that in to their normal everyday life.
Yeah. Those individuals who are working 9 to 5, so to speak, but are still trying to live that healthy life, still trying to live for their life. And I, get to make fitness and wellness and all of that my own 9 to 5. So there's so many different levels on how it works and works well, but it really does come down to that passion of like wanting to speak to that audience, wanting to help that audience, because I used to be that person. I used to sit there and work at that desk, and that's, even though I am a movement and a wellness coach, I spend a lot of time on the computer doing a lot of the background stuff. So there's still a lot of that aspect for me in my work life. And I try to, continue to emulate that and just come up with new and fun and unique ways that people can insert this into their daily life. So it's not, again, like I need to prescribe myself, 15 minutes here. I need to prescribe myself an hour here.
Again, whether you're working at that 9 to 5 or you're an entrepreneur working the 9 to 5 plus, real estate agency, you can work, any 60 hours you want in any given week. Right. But we have lives, we have families, we have maybe interests and things that we want to do. I think a lot of times like people, because if you don't use it, you lose it, and you get stuck in this routine, or maybe just coming home after work and you're relaxing. And so it's sitting back on the couch or watching TV and things like that. Like, how do you pour back into your family and do the things that you love to do? Like, how do you go play basketball if you want to play basketball? Because there's so many 44-year-olds that are people like my brother is younger than me and actually played high school basketball. And he is like, told me he couldn't picture going out on the court right now. Like, you know what I mean? Like, how do you maintain and do the things you want to do, keep the energy? Like, how do you do that?
I include them. That's a big part of it is a lot of the times when we're talking about these different group fitness classes or even just going to the gym, a lot of the times that is still very singular. And And it's a great, it's a great way to get out there and, have your community outside your family. But I love to include my family in my movement. Like after we're recording here, it's a nice, beautiful, sunny day. And my
Yes.
daughter already told me on the way to school that she wants to go for a walk. And so we will regularly walk like 2.5 miles a day. Because she loves it, because I included her in it, and we used to do
Yeah.
that. And even as like a kid, I used to put her in a little seat on my bike, and we'd go for mile-long bike rides. And even just last summer, we went to Mackinac Island, which was walking up a ton of stairs, going on a ton of rocky beaches, riding our bike the entire loop. And like as kids, they push you forward because they are just the Energizer bunnies. They go, 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 go. And they just never want to stop. So it's like they get you out there playing Frisbee on the beach and doing all these fun things. And I started going to the playground with my daughter. And I always brought a book thinking, I'm going to sit and I'm going to read and she's going to play. And that never happens. That never happens. But I started just getting out and playing with her. And then I'm finding myself on the monkey bars. And it's the same thing where I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't remember the last time I was on the monkey bars, and your hands are dying trying to just hold on and go to the next bar. And then it becomes more fun. And then it becomes a game. And then you start to get really creative. And then this play starts to enter your life again. We decide we're too old for play.
Yes.
But
I'm so glad you said this. Yeah.
One of the biggest things that I wish we had more around our community are adult playgrounds.
Ooh.
I did a workshop in Chattanooga, and they had one. They had rings, they had bars, they had a whole bunch of different things that were adult sized.
Yeah.
So that adults could get out and they could go and be playful and go and do more out of the box movements that we don't normally do.
It's so huge. Like, again, like just thinking about that joy of being out there, like being on the monkey bars, like that flashback, like it's bringing that happiness back, bringing that play back. And I think that we get so serious as adults sometimes that it's like, we look at Facebook, or we compare ourselves, and then we don't be silly.
Yeah. Yeah, we just don't we just don't allow ourselves to play. I mean, we'll go do those activities, but as soon as I started playing with my daughters on the playground and just having that joy, then they light up, and then they feel like they're being included, and then they get that really quality time with their parents that a lot of kids don't get to see. I mean, sometimes we do that, with their dolls or whatever they want to do, but I love to do that with movement, because then they feel like they can be silly, and then they feel like they can continue to do that. And they'll see me doing, weird things on the playground, and then, maybe I fall and show them it's okay. I fell, whatever, I get up, dust myself off, and just keep going. Like I'm not going to live in a bubble.
Like demonstrating.
Yeah.
That's so, because like we can tell our kids not to be afraid. We can tell our kids so many things. But if they watch they learn by watching.
Yeah.
They learn by seeing what you do.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And so they're going to mimic what you do. They are always watching. And even if they might not like to do all the things that you like to do, like I have one daughter that loves to go for walks, one that would rather go on a bike ride or go play basketball. So both of them have two different things that they love to do. But so that means that I get a lot of things, that I get to get exposed to a lot of different types of movements. And so it's fun. It makes me feel younger. And then it makes me feel stronger at the end of the day, because then I'm like, I didn't think I could do that. I thought I was going to break myself, but I did it.
In like, it's like the opposite of like, if you don't use it, you lose it.
Yeah.
You get stronger the more you do it.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
I love all of this because it ties so much into my story. Like working a 9 to 5, I was in sales leadership and I used to work out, and I find myself saying that to my people, like, oh, when I used to work out, or like they'd be these young people telling me they're going to the gym, like, oh, when I used to do this. But then I'd get home, I'd be so exhausted. My kid was like, my son at the time was probably like 3, and he just wants to play, and he's got to your point, all this energy, and he wants to show me this stuff. And then I found myself sitting on the couch, like just wanting to take a nap, right? And just being run down and tired. And one day I caught myself like, why is this something I used to do? And if I don't correct this, this is my life, right? Like I'm going to come home, I'm going to be tired. I'm going to, not right now, all those kind of things. If I go back and I start working out, I go through like, I'm going to have that energy back again.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely, now my kid's 16, he'll be 16 in a few days here. And I love playing basketball. I love the game, but the thing that I love most is that he plays with me. So Tuesday nights, Saturday mornings, we're out playing, and I love being the dad that can go out there and run with his son and play and set that example. And like, again, I want my son to be 45 and being able to go out and still play basketball, because I think it's so sad. I love all my friends and my brother, but I think it's so sad that like you can't go out and do that.
Well, and those are the things that they're going to remember. They're going to remember, oh man, mom went and climbed that tree with me, or, she walked down that river with me, or, mom went and played on the playground with me. They're going to remember those activities. Memories. Yeah.
I can guarantee my son's going to remember Tuesday nights and Saturday mornings, and it's something like he was going to stay the night with his friends the other night, and he was like, but I got to be back home for basketball at 7 a.m. So, like it's cool. Like he looks forward to it, but it's leading by example.
Yeah. And you can start at any age. I mean, even when my daughter was a couple years old, I taught her some breathing exercises, because she had, as kids do, they get frustrated and don't know how to regulate. So I taught her some breathing exercises. Let's sit and take 5 deep breaths together. Let's take a time out and let's just take 5 deep breaths together. And that was such an invaluable lesson for her, because that's something that at the time I thought, I'm just doing what normal, parents do, and I'm teaching her how to regulate, and I'm teaching her how to just,
every parent teaches their kid how to regulate and breathe. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, and, she's just, learning how to cope with the situation. And then a couple years later, she had a friend over that was a little bit younger, and she was having the same kind of moments. And I just was listening from outside the door, and she was just like, well, let's take 5 deep breaths together.
Oh my God.
And I was just like, oh my gosh, my heart.
Oh my God.
Like,
I just got the
cheering
tingles.
up.
That
I'm
was
just
great.
like, oh my gosh. And then, so now fast forward, she's now 12, and she loves doing robotics and stuff like that. And so she was in a competition this year. They made it to states, and she got to go on the actual floor, which is in front of an audience of a couple hundred people, and it's streamed live. So lots of pressure for a middle schooler. And so she got on the floor, and some things weren't going quite right with the robot. And so they're trying to figure it out. And she's sitting there waiting for them to start their match. And she sits there and she goes like this. I'm watching from the stands. She goes like this. And goes. And she does that a couple of times. And then she takes one more deep breath, and then they start the match, and they go. And it wasn't the best match, but, at the end of the day, she kept a level head for the competition. And when she got done, I'm like, were you a little worried about the match? And she's like, yeah, but I took my pulse, and I slowed down my heart rate, and I did some breathing, and I wasn't as nervous after that.
That's
and I was
powerful.
just like, oh my gosh, just one lesson, one moment that I took to bring her into my world of what one might think is like, well, it's my world of yoga, and maybe she doesn't understand it, but she took that lesson and she shared it with others, and she continues to use it.
That's so powerful. Tell me more about the power of breath.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, the breath is just, it's one of those things that we don't think about until it's challenged. Whether it's anxious because you're going into a meeting and now you're like, all of a sudden I can't breathe and I'm short of breath, or challenged due to physical reasons because we're going running for the first time, or we're walking uphill.
Or someone's holding a pillow over your face.
Yeah, that too, yeah.
Where's my air?
Right. So we don't think about it until it's challenged. And then when we do, it's just kind of like this fight to catch that breath. But it's also getting in tune with that nervous system too, and being able to regulate and being able to say, no, I'm safe. I'm okay. I can breathe. And so the breath is just endlessly powerful, and it's not just used for athletic or, yoga type situations, but it's like that's one of the things that I actually really like to teach to my corporate clients is about the breath, because we think about the breath as coming in through the nose and maybe back out the nose or maybe the mouth. But there's more to the breath than that. There's more than just inflating those lungs. Maybe we've got really tight sides and we can't get that full breath because the body's so tight we can't let that expend out. Or especially like with women, where like we have to be posture, and then we puff those ribs out, and then we constantly hold that belly space in. And so when we're constantly holding that belly, we're not allowing ourselves to get that nice, big, deep breath. And the breath is so powerful because the breath, one, is helping create that pressure within the abdominal that's helping to support all those structures in there. So taking that breath all the way into that belly space is just going to create just that beautiful structure, or it's going to help create that beautiful structure in the torso. It also pulls the rib cage directly over the pelvis. And so it creates alignment within the body too. So the breath is more than just bringing oxygen into the body and expelling out waste. It's creating movement in the body. One of the things that I always love to say in my classes is feel the breath. Feel the body move with the breath, and feel how the body wants to move with the breath. We might inhale and feel the right side of our ribs expand more than the left. We might notice our posture, because when we're sitting, we're cutting off our lung capacity. So it really makes us think about our body a little bit differently when we think about the breath, or where we can send the breath. You look at some of these postures that people get themselves into, and you're like, oh my gosh, how can you even breathe? You're completely cutting off your whole belly space. But where can you send the breath to still get that full, nutritious breath?
It's so huge. And while you're talking about this, it makes me think that so many times, like if we get a headache, you go mask it with something, there's like, there's so many ailments and things that we go through, and we find whether, when my grandma passed away, for example, I use this story a lot, like the coroner came over and was like, is she on any medications? And I'll never forget this my whole life. My mom brought out this dresser drawer and it was filled medications. So we think about all these things, but there's like so many natural remedies, so many things that we're not doing. I love how you use that example of women, like in this, like, a cosmetic or worried about what people are going to think type of thing. You're literally losing your breath and causing kind of issues, because what happens if you're not getting full breaths, right? Over and over again every single day.
Absolutely. Well, then you're holding this constant contraction. So then when we're flaring out those ribs thinking we're getting this amazing posture, we're often pulling on some of those muscles that are in our lower back, like that psoas. It's attached to the lower back and the hip area, and then comes up and attaches to those ribs. So there's a lot more nuances that come with the breath. Plus in the ribs, there's all those little muscles in between. And so even just taking that nice deep breath can provide release of tension in the body.
I got a really good example of this. It was probably back in September, October, end of September. It was a little colder out and heading into fall, and where I did one of those cold plunges, and like the whole route around even being able to do that is the breath.
Yes.
Like letting out the breath, going in. If you don't have your breath mastered, you're probably not sitting in there for very long.
No. And even like if you do any research into that, a lot of them are like, well, you need to first do your breathing exercises before you go in. Make sure that you can tap into that breath so that you can then go right back into, we've all taken that first plunge into the lake of the season or into the pool, and it's like, okay, stop breathing like a like a scared gerbil. Take that breath all the way into that belly space.
Right. That's so funny. It's like, it's taking control of it.
Yes.
Versus your body responding.
Yes, absolutely.
Being intentional. But and it's like that fight or flight. When you jump into that cold water, your body's either you're going to jump back out, or you're going to fight it, and you're fighting and you're losing your breath actually.
Right. Yeah. Because your body's like, well, it's cold and I don't like being cold. And so I need to get out of this. It doesn't feel safe. So then you bring that breath back in and you can make it feel safe for the appropriate amount of time.
It's so interesting. Like, there's different things. And like, I dropped we were taking our old bed apart, and it was this really heavy block of wood, like the bed frame, and I dropped it on my toe,
Oh.
and it hurt so bad, but it was just breathing through it. Luckily I didn't break a bone. It didn't heal a broken bone, but my toe literally looked like it was like flattened out, and it hurt really bad. And like the first thing you want to do is like scream, but it was like catching my breath and just breathing through it, and the pain subsided.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I went through this fun little exercise with a therapist the other day in one of my business groups, and it was all about impulse control. And she had you place some Mentos on your tongue and try not to swallow for a period of time. Fight that instinct to want to swallow.
Wow.
And so a lot of us, in this just quick, simple exercise, like immediately went to breath work. How do you, try to regulate that? Now my body is actually starting to like panic a little bit because it wants to swallow, but I'm not letting it swallow. So take that breath and try to calm that sense, that atom, that kick of like, I have to swallow. So it was a really interesting exercise to kind of see it from a different view.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That takes you to a totally different view.
Yeah.
But I can totally picture it. And again, getting that breath and just shifting your mind from what's actually going on.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. And the breath, I can think of endless amounts of examples on just how important the breath is. I mean, even just, I'm scuba certified. And when I went and did that, like the first time I actually got into an open bed of water, so much different than, doing it in a pool when you're training. But getting in that, like, there's that sense of panic when you first get under the water and you're like, I can't breathe out my nose. I'm so used to breathing out my nose. Now I have to breathe out through my mouth, and I'm underwater and I can't let go of this, it's my oxygen and I have to continue to breathe. And so you have to like stop and sit for a second. And then again, take that breath one at a time and get used to that rhythm of the breath, to get you out of that little bit of panic of I'm underwater. This is unnatural.
What are people's biggest challenges when you start working with them?
I think a lot of it is self-limiting perspectives. A lot of it is, sometimes I'll explore these different more minimalist concepts or more natural type concepts, whether it's, things about the shoes, or just like doing these, different kinds of movements that don't quite fit in one box or another. They're just like, oh, that was kind of weird. I don't know what that was, but, what book are you reading today? But, it's just letting them open up and, feeling that sense of playfulness. And I have some clients that I've been working with for years, and, at the beginning they're like, oh, I can't go to a group class and I can't do this and I can't do that. And, I'm so frustrated because I can't stand on my leg for 10 seconds. And why is this hard? This shouldn't be hard. And it's like, well, you need to get past that mindset. Because once you get past that mindset, get past that frustration and really just focus on what you're trying to do, it's like something's unlocked. And then it's like, sometimes we have to run through something one time and be like, let's just figure it out and fail and be okay with that.
Be comfortable failing.
Yeah. And then the next time we do it, they're like, oh my gosh, I actually like did it. And I'm like, yeah, you could do it all along. You just had to get out of your head.
Giving yourself permission to fail.
Yes.
Because you're never going to learn anything if you don't give yourself that permission, because
Absolutely.
you're going to protect yourself from something that you feel like it hurts.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and especially as business owners and entrepreneurs, like you have to be used to failing, but fail forward and those are some of the biggest lessons that we learn.
Absolutely.
And they can be some of the most challenging things to go through or even to watch. A lot of entrepreneurs have entrepreneur friendships, or I grew up in a family of, entrepreneurs. My dad owns his own business and has started multiple businesses. And, some of those didn't succeed. And, just watching and learning and, seeing how other people have overcome or figured out like they've opened doors with failure, or they've like found the true path through that failure, where it's like, yeah, if that didn't happen, you wouldn't be on this path now.
Yeah. I love that, because I've had so many conversations, whether on this podcast or with people that are going through the entrepreneurial journey outside of the podcast, where in their story, their parents were entrepreneurs, and we talked about the kids watching, right? And so, they're watching, they're seeing, but oftentimes these really successful people that I'm talking to, and entrepreneur, they're business owners and that kind of thing, their parents didn't necessarily have to be successful entrepreneurs. They probably failed over and over again, but they learned from that. It wasn't that they got discouraged to not do that. They just took and learned the lessons and became better than maybe what their parents were.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and then you just get kind of, you see the mental attitude, you see the things that go into it. And I think that's a lot of the challenges for first-time entrepreneurs, is they don't see the behind-the-scenes things. But when, especially like if you have friends that are entrepreneurs, they see them at work, but a lot of times they don't see the behind-the-scenes. When you grow up in that environment, you get to see all of it.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's so huge. And again, to still do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's so huge because, there's some on the flip side, when you start a business, and if nobody in your life has been an entrepreneur, they're all scared for you, you know, and they mean the best, but they're the people that are like, what are you doing? You're crazy. Why don't you go back to your job? Like, they mean the best, but they're also the biggest discouragers, because it's hard enough for ourselves to make that jump.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But again, it's that, allowing yourself to expose that part of your life to your kids. Like, when I was younger, we were taught typing classes, Mavis Bacon, and, how fast can you type? And, but my dad's generation, they didn't. So he didn't know how to type, or at least not efficiently. So when everybody's getting computers and he's switching contracts to online, he hired me to type out his contracts. So I would type out his contracts for him. And that's, how I even just started being in that. So then I'm like, I can see the power of a contract. I'm going to type up contracts for my parents, and that's how I'm going to get what I want.
The power of the contract, learning it as a kid.
Yes. Yes. I think they still have some of them. So, I got my fair share of things by, creating budgets and contracts, because I typed those out for my dad. So I'm like, you gave me this power. I'm
no
gonna
kidding.
Use it.
What kind of that's an incredible experience. To get that hands-on.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And just being exposed to it is always fun. And then it sparks this creativity in you as a kid, where you don't necessarily think in the box of like, I have to go to college and I have to go get this type of job and I have to go work in an office. It's when you see that, you're like, anything's an opportunity. And that's how we get some of these awesome creative businesses and tools and resources that we use today.
Yeah. There are so many opportunities when you look at it, when you can see it for that.
Yeah.
It's just solving problems.
Oh, absolutely. It's solving problems and having passion.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. What keeps your passion going?
It's my family. It's just enjoying life and having that adventurous spirit. I always want to have an adventure, and an adventure doesn't have to be a destination. An adventure could be anything. It really could. It
can be the smallest of things.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I'm someone that takes like joy in just the smallest things in life, like just even like hitting a coffee shop downtown, or today, being able to go with your daughter and go for a walk. Like those are things that don't cost money or anything else per se. It's just, you can find so much enjoyment in those and enrich your life just through the small little items.
Yeah. It's about living and not working to live, but living to work, to enjoy, and doing all of that. And I'm, not saying everybody can flit around, and, some of us have to have that 9 to 5, and some of us enjoy that 9 to 5. But having that spirit, I think a lot of things that like people got into, once I, had to spend a lot of time at home, was into making things again. There's so many videos on like sourdough starter and canning and like a lot of these older things that, older generations used to do are coming back around, and people are getting joy out of, I created this, I made this, I did this.
It's so true between like the sourdough canning. You see a lot of like crafters out there. My wife does that, but I think about like my, growing up, my grandma, doing stuff like that. And you'd never think that would turn into like a side business or something that somebody can actually go out and do. And then I watch my wife do that, and it's like, it's cool. These different things that we can bring back.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and then it keeps those memories alive too.
Yeah.
Because there's so many where it's like, there's so many stories where it's like, I used to make this pesto with my grandma, and we'd always get together and we'd make it every year.
Yep.
But it's
because more than the pesto, it's the story that goes behind it.
Right. It's that quality time that you spent with that family member.
Yep.
Like I had an uncle who passed away, and with my cousins, I'm like, I have some recipes from your mom and from your dad. And he's like, oh, that's one thing I wish I had, were some of those recipes, some of those things that created those memories of, sitting around the TV, watching a good movie and eating their delicious fudge and popcorn. And so, I just made copies for them to send them. And I'm like, I'm going to send you the actual copy, and you can rewrite it if you want to, because it's in their handwriting and it's got stains from making the recipe. So how much memory is in just that one little card?
No, you got me emotional. That's so awesome. That's a really, man, that pulls you into your feels for sure. Because I think we all have those types of stories.
Mm-hmm. And those are the moments I live for. That's what keeps me passionate, is creating those types of memories and just feeling like I've honored my family and myself, and I've given back through whatever ways I can.
That's a great way to wrap that question around. That's so phenomenal. I love how you brought that back. Tell me about how you've been able to use, like, if you've been able to use the marketing experience and like your background as a job, like, does that give you kind of a leg up as you come in?
Yeah. And when I moved away from that and started going into wellness, I'm like, I hate marketing. I'm not going to do it anymore. And why was I even doing it for as long as I was? And, I just kind of had this bitter taste in my mouth at that point about it. But, when you're a business owner, when you start your business out, you're wearing all the hats. You're wearing all the hats. You're spinning all the plates. You're doing all the dances.
You're doing all the marketing, the sales, the finance, all of it.
Yeah.
The doing.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of stuff that you have to do yourself, and you have to figure out yourself. So I'm definitely bringing, all of that experience into play. But that's been revitalized because I'm doing it with something that I'm passionate about.
Yeah.
So, I have so many voice memos. I have so many memos on my phone that are just like, post this, do that. Just so many random, like, oh my gosh, you should put that out there. Or like, you need to share that, or like this. And so it's just, I am so much more inspired. And so now I'm able to like draw on those tools and actually enjoy those tools and enjoy that analytical side of myself. I love to be creative, and, my kids sometimes call me a hippie, but it's like, I am spreadsheets, Excel, data all day. I love science and the analytical side of things. So that gets me to play in that environment still. That's
a skill that is like a bonus when you're an entrepreneur, that you love the numbers and the. Mm-hmm. I'm the same way. Like, it's like, clicking the button. Did it update? Did it change?
Yeah. Yes.
To kind of wrap up, we've talked a little bit about one-on-one coaching, groups, and talked about corporation, working with companies. Tell me a little bit about the differences and, how people can engage you.
Yeah, absolutely. So with one-on-one, it's things where we can work virtually, we can work in person, either at someone's home if they're within a certain radius, or at a local like studio that I partner with. And those individuals, it's anything from just pure yoga to bringing in that functional movement or working on training that balance and stability. So they get that one-on-one I work directly with what their goals are and, closely watch what they're doing and adapt everything to them.
They get a chance to grow their confidence,
Yeah.
really get it right.
Well, and then we can really grow really fast towards their goals. And then that way I can see the little nuances and things that are happening where it's like, okay, I know we're working on this, but I'm really seeing this. So let's pivot over here for a minute because it's all going to come right back around. And then with the workshops, so those are usually local workshops, where we're getting in person to work in those group settings. And then for corporate, again, those are largely virtual because I work with a lot of remote teams just to bring in an educational component to wellness. So sometimes I'll do just movement classes, but a lot of the times my corporate clients want that educational portion to it. So we'll spend, half of the time talking about a particular concept, whether that's the breath or how the body's adapting to our sedentary lifestyles. And then I give them practical ways to then, build this tool set. So they're not just walking away, oh, I just did a yoga class or I just did some stretching, but they're actually walking away with tools that they can then use. How can you reinvent your workspace to make it more wellness centric or create a better working environment for yourself? So then you, at the end of the day, you're ultimately more productive.
And that's the huge part, because whether you're an entrepreneur, you're working at a company, you're a parent, all these things, by taking care of yourself, by taking care of your body, by bringing your movement, you're improving your energy, you're improving your effectiveness and your productivity when you're doing those things that you need to get done.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're productive at work and you're present at home.
Love it. That's a beautiful way to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Christie, thank you so much for coming down and eating a coffee.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
My pleasure.